Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Ryan again with another issue of Making HM1 in 2021. Today we're going over OpNav instruction 5100.19 Foxtrot again, but today we're going to be going through Chapter B10. So again, OpNav instruction 5100.19 Foxtrot, as you see here on the home page. Today I'm trying to zoom in a little bit more, so it's maybe you could read it when you're watching the video too, because I tend to move kind of slow through the instructions so you could read along. I read somewhere that both listening and reading to something together improves comprehension. I don't know if that's true or not. You should tell me after you watch these and let me know if it helps. So chapter Bravo 10. So first we're looking for chapter section Bravo, which is section B, measured hazard specific elements. So hazard specific, and 10 lead control. So what is chapter B10 of OpNav instruction 5100.19 Foxtrot? Lead control. So let me go ahead and scroll down to that. Oh, went straight to D. Now we're in C's. Still in C's. Still in C's. Oh, B12, so we're almost there. B10, here we go. So boom, if the advancement exam question was, what is chapter Bravo 10 in OpNav instruction 5100.19 Foxtrot? Lead control. So I already went the instructions, so I have my paper copy in front of me, so I'm just going to read off the things that I highlighted. Honestly, for lead control, there's not a whole lot that I remember being on the exam or that I remember ever seeing before. But I also only get about 60% of the questions right, as referenced in my profile sheet video. So we'll take a look. Maybe there's something in here that'll help. This may make that 1% difference. So good to define terms. So what does lead mean? Metallic paint, all inorganic lead compounds, and organic lead soaps. So lead with anything in it. It also has some paint colors that typically have lead. It does say that it isn't all-inclusive, but a good rule of thumb, red, forest green, chrome yellow, and school bus yellow typically contain lead compounds. So if you're not sure and you see that red, forest green, chrome yellow, school bus yellow, try to assume that there's some lead in there. So with most instructions, regardless if it's a chapter or standalone instruction, responsibilities. So CO, their big job is you're only allowed to do paint removal when it's to protect the ship from corrosion, when incidental to hot work, and or bare metal is required for an inspection. So it straight up says you are never allowed to remove paint for cosmetic reasons. That's something that I learned today. I didn't know that. Yeah, I thought cosmetic was a reason you could repaint, but according to this, you are not allowed to repaint for cosmetic reasons. It has to be for protecting from corrosion, when incidental to hot work, and or bare metal is required for an inspection. The CO also needs to cough up the money, so they make sure enough money is available to buy protective clothing and any equipment. So they need to make sure the money is available for people to do their job. Makes sense to me. I think that's a big part of the money job in general. Make sure people can afford to do their job. Safety officer. So verify that the clothing and equipment's on board. So CO, make sure we have the money. Safety officer, make sure we have it. They do their periodic industrial hygiene survey, which is not specified in this chapter. Let's see. Ensure that lead hazard training happens. So action level is defined as AL. So that's basically like how much employee exposure occurs. So how exposed are you really to lead? Whew, that was hard to get out. So this is what action level. So exposure level is considered for this instruction. 30 micrograms per cubic meter of air averaged over an 8-hour period. So it's got to be averaged over 8 hours, and it's 30 micrograms per cubic meter. So 30 UG over M3 of air averaged over the 8-hour period. So the AL shows up a lot in this instruction, so that may be one important to know. So what's an action level? That's the employee exposure, which is marked by 30 micrograms or more of cubic meter of air averaged over an 8-hour period. Safety also needs to request industrial hygiene assistance when needed, and make sure that, oh, here, look, annually again, just like all the other afloat occupational health stuff, things are reviewed annually. Divos, make sure people are wearing their PPE, and make sure that anywhere that is exposed is marked up. So ensure that personnel who work with lead or work in areas where potential exists for lead exposure is identified in the IH survey. So divos just make sure that the areas that people are working are actually marked correctly. And they also report to the medical department who works with lead and what do they do about it. So if the medical department ever needs to run like a random on who may be exposed, they'll go to the divos to find out who's working where. Medical department, they help the safety office in conducting lead hazard training. They do the medical surveillance program if required. They also schedule the blood lead analysis and physical examinations. So they do all the medical stuff. The only thing that I saw for the medical part, which is probably important to know, like just because it's a timeline. So within 5 working days, the medical department has to notify the personnel in writing of the results that represent their exposure. So within 5 days, as medical, you have to notify the person, hey, this is the result of what your blood test was. Let's see, above the PEL. So PEL is an acronym that I did not see earlier in this instruction. Let's see if we can find it. So Control F, PEL. PEL, I don't see that defined anywhere, which is really weird. Yeah, so I just Controlled F in this entire chapter, and that did not show up. So let's take a quick sidebar, because what's the point of doing this if we're not going to do it right? Actually, let's go back to chapter 1. Maybe it was something that I missed, and if not, we're going to Google it. Yeah, PEL does not show up at all in the thing. So let's give that a Google real quick. So what does PEL mean? Permissible exposure limit. So if I was to guess, because we're only doing a chapter of the instruction, because normally for standard writing, you define your term like in the very beginning. So probably that was something that was found out earlier. So, okay. Okay, so exposure level. All right, so the PEL is that permissible exposure level. So all hands, they need to be trained, they need to wear their PPE, and they need to report to medical as required. Here are some definitions of the Industrial Hygiene Survey that evaluates all workplaces which lead is used. So their job is to survey for IH stuff. They look for lead hazards. So permissible exposure level for an 8-hour window is 50 micrograms of air. And that hazardous range is 30. AL. Let's pull that one back up. So hey, new instruction. I'm glad this one's stumbling me. Some of the other ones I've been able to understand, but this one's confusing to me. Action level. Okay, so all action level means is people are exposed. So not necessarily hazardous, but action level is where people are exposed is 30. And then that permissible exposure level is 50. So it's 20 higher. So I think 30 and 50. Both of them are using the same measurement, micrograms over cubic meter. So just remember 30 is the AL, 50 is the permissible exposure limit. Biological monitoring must be initiated when a employee's exposure level exceeds the AL for more than 30 days per year. So biological monitoring maintenance basically means we're doing labs and medical stuff on them to see how they're doing. Control lead, there's 7 principles. A lot of these ones kind of make sense. So don't use lead. Keep the grinding to a minimum. Try to keep the heat under 600 degrees Fahrenheit, which is super hot. Make sure work surfaces are free as lead. Rags that are used for wiping down must be disposed of as lead waste. Wow, tongue twister. So if it's a rag that you're using to wipe down lead stuff, it is considered lead waste. And you also, yep, that's pretty much it. Any lead containing waste must be sealed in impermeable containers. And isolate hot work on lead and abrasive metal. So keep it away from other people. Ventilation, so make sure you have air. PPE, make sure people have it. Remove uniform clothing and wear protective clothing. So there's special gear you got to wear. And that gear you got to wear, you must remove it before you leave the work area. So lead gear is like a specific, you wear that in the area, you dump it, you leave. Change rooms need to be nearby because you're not going to walk around naked trying to get to your changing rooms. So launder lead contaminated clothing. And people that wash it need to be in the know of what they're washing. Warning signs, kind of obvious. Lead work area, poison, don't smoke, eat, or drink. It does say earlier you're supposed to wash up before you smoke, eat, or drink after working with lead. Let's see. So make sure places are clean as possible for lead wow, today is a rough day. Busy day at work. Of lead accumulation. So try not to let lead accumulate. Clean your surfaces once per shift. Only use wet sweeping, shoveling, or brushing when other methods have been found to be ineffective. My guess for that is I don't want to move the particles around. But the goal is really to vacuum. So I'm not wiping it around. Don't use compressed air to clean work surfaces because I'm not trying to turn it into airborne particles. Personal hygiene. Don't eat or drink when working with lead. Wash your hands and faces before you eat. Lead-containing waste materials are HAZMAT. I think that's important, especially because we go over the HAZMAT instruction for our bib as well. So note that lead-containing waste is considered HAZMAT. Lead containers must be noted as lead waste only. Here we go. So what exactly is medical surveillance? That was brought up earlier in the instruction. So pre-placement medical evaluation. That's where you're looking at people's blood, and that's every 6 months. So note that medical surveillance is every 6 months. That's different than almost every other med survey. That's different than the ear stuff. It's 6 months instead of 12. So remember, medical surveillance for lead, 6 months. And then again, you're including that program when you're exposed to that action level for over 30 days a year. So if you think 1 month, you're exposed. You got to get put on that program. Here's that 5 days again. So within 5 days of blood result, the person must be notified of writing of their level. And if their level is above 30 micrograms per deciliter. So there's that 30 again. Here's a big one for recording. So for lead, it stays in their medical record and it is retained 20 years after they left the naval service or 40 years after the date of the last entry, whichever of those is longer. So I would guess for most people that would be after 20 years of naval service, but I guess for some people the 40 years should be longer because it's twice as long. That I don't really know the difference in that, but just remember 20 years after naval service or 40 years after the last entry, whichever of those is longer. So hold on to lead for a lot. My guess is because you can get sued for lead exposure, so they CYA to be like, nope, they're within the action level. So exposure assessment data. Let's see, each operational lead emit, it's kind of obvious stuff. Training. I don't think it gives any timelines. Oh, here we go. So all personnel for lead training prior to you working in it. So you're not going to get trained in what to do with lead after you've already done it before working there, and annually. It's really the big one. The training there is kind of obvious, like what are you doing? What's the proper fit? What is the adverse health effects? So kind of the obvious thing you'd imagine in training, but the timeline is a year. All right, today was a shorter video. I accidentally ended one of the videos earlier, so I'm going to try to merge these two into one video file. Never done that before, so hopefully it's a seamless transition. I have one new follower or subscriber, but they didn't have their name on their profile, so I don't know who you are, but thank you for subscribing. Yeah, have a good night.